Hey guys, I'm trying this new thing where I take a time-lapse illustration and I do a voiceover and I show you guys my process, and included in that process are all the mistakes that I make while I paint and all my desperate attempts to fix said mistakes. Now here's the first mistake I make. I laid down too much of the yellow watercolor pencil before I added the water. And now my yellow is way brighter than I planned. To combat this, I take a paper towel, a clean one, I wet it with a little bit of water, and I mop up this paint. Okay? And when I add a little bit of water and then kind of mop it all up, I kind of pick up the yellow. And so now the yellow is much softer and more what I was going for. And yes, my fingers are still blue from the indigo dye. Mostly off my fingers, still on my nails. It's like a badge of honor at this point. Water brushes, these things that I'm using right now, they're new to me. I've been using them for about 3 weeks now, and they are super fun. They're basically plastic bristle brushes with water inside the handle, and just like a teeny tiny bit comes out just like at a steady stream, and then you can squeeze it if you want more water to come out at any given point in time. But as you use the brush, the water is constantly coming out, so you have to kind of control that and handle that and use that to your advantage. I'm really on a watercolor pencil kick right now, and part of that has to do with these new watercolor pencils that I bought before I left for Japan. I bought these expressly because watercolor pencils are the most portable kind of paint, and I wanted something new to challenge me while I was running around sketching in Japan. So these are Derwent Inktense watercolor pencils, and no, seriously, they are intense. And now I'm going to skip to the blades. When I use watercolor, I will paint one section, and then I will skip to a section kind of far away and paint that so that I'm not painting next to a wet section, because I don't want the colors to start bleeding into each other's space. So sweater, and then blades, and then later probably skin tone, because I'm hoping by then the sweater will be mostly dry, and then I'll do the pants last. I'm just using a dry, skinny brush here to kind of mix and blend in the watercolor pencil with the water so that I don't get any graininess of the pencil without adding more water, especially since I'm painting such skinny sections. And then I always keep paper towels around so that I can mop up any spills, clean up any areas, dry out any over wet brushes or over wet sections of my paper. I paint on a Mayline, and I have several layers of tracing paper spread out and taped down across my Mayline, and this is the surface I use to illustrate. The several layers of tracing paper allow for a softer surface so that I'm not scraping lead on top of a really hard tabletop. And I do stuff like I scribble on the tracing paper, I clean off brushes. I don't know if you caught me in the very beginning of the video cleaning off my brush right on top of the tracing paper. I do that kind of sort of thing constantly, and then, once the top layer gets a little bit too crusty, I just rip that off, put a new one down, and it helps the longevity of my tabletops. Yes, your skin tones video is coming. It is in the queue. It is coming out Later this month, later this summer, definitely this summer. Not exactly sure where in the queue it is, but I know it's there. It's one of my most requested videos. I promise it is coming. It is the most requested video after how to draw drapes and clothing on bodies. And that video is definitely coming up very, very soon. Actually, that one is a whole series, and that series is starting very, very soon. I have deliberately not edited out any portion of my painting. Obviously, everything is super fast. And I've done some close-ups of some things, but I have not edited out any parts because I want you guys to see that, you know, sometimes I make mistakes and I goof and I have to fix them like super fast because water is dripping everywhere and I am on a slightly slanted surface. And so the slightly slanted surface is really nice for everything except for when water decides to start sliding. Good times! All right? Pros and cons, right? I've been using these Derwent Inktense watercolor pencils for about 3 weeks now, and seriously, you guys, I highly recommend them. I don't use watercolor pencils as a replacement for color pencils like some people do. I use them strictly as an actual paint, and I've been enjoying them using as a paint. And I also got just regular Derwent watercolor pencils, and I like them too. I say I don't like them as much as my Faber-Castells in terms of blendability, smooth color, you know, that kind of thing. But they are nice. But I would have to say that the Inktense are my favorites so far. If you are someone who tends to be heavy-handed though, I would recommend you go for the Faber-Castells or the Derwent regular watercolor pencils because those pencils are more subtle. I have tried out playing with the Derwent Inktense and the regular Derwents together in the same illustration, and they work well together. I have not had a problem with that. And now I'm going to work on some other sections of the illustration because my green flowers are still wet and I don't want to put wet black paint next to wet green paint and make a beautiful muddy mess. So I'm going to work on my print, make my trees look more awesome, add more shading as necessary, intense the black on the leather parts of my doppers, you know, put in my facial features, that sort of thing. And then when my green flowers are more dry, I'm gonna go back and put in the background color. Now this is where I start making a lot of mistakes and trying desperately to fix my mistakes. Because when I do any kind of print with a black background, my preference is to use gouache so that I can just lay down a black background without thinking about all the shapes or not thinking too hard about the shapes, and then take an opaque green gouache and just cover whatever background color is going on. But I'm trying to just do the whole thing watercolor pencil instead of resorting to gouache. And so I'm trying to draw the jade green flowers and have the jet black background. And I'm trying to not leave any white spaces. But also, it's watercolor, so it gets a little bit messy. So I just kind of keep going back and forth, pushing the boundaries and getting the colors closer together until I don't have any more white gaps. But this is obviously something I will need more practice on. If I was just doing color pencil, it would be easier because You know, dry media is easy. It's a slow, color pencil is a slow medium. You just color closely and nothing dribbles or spreads willy-nilly. And now I'm using a 0.7 size 2B lead regular mechanical pencil just to punch up some highlights in the construction. I don't want the pencil outline to be super heavy, but I do like to clarify and clean things up a bit with the pencil. Now, remember, before you add a pencil, you have to make sure that your paint is mostly dry, if not completely dry. Otherwise, the graphite won't show up. You'll just be scraping the surface of your paper and scraping your paint with the sharpness of your graphite and not actually depositing any of the color. Now, I had to resort to gouache for this because I wanted to put highlights in the metal, but I just couldn't get it to happen. I have a white watercolor pencil. It was just not showing up ever. But, you know, that's why I have the white gouache. That's why I bought those little white paints in Japan to see if I can replace the white gouache with those. If I didn't have the gouache, I would have used a white gel pen for those small little highlights. Or even like a white charcoal pencil that is far more vibrant than either one of these. So if you like this sort of time-lapse illustration plus process voiceover type video and want more of these, let me know in the comments. I enjoyed making this one quite a bit. And you guys know the drill. If you have any questions, check the info box. If your answer is not there, leave me a comment, and I will see you next time.